Earlier this month, renowned criminal lawyer Clayton Ruby passed away. You were friends with him. Before we start talking about what he meant to you, we wanted to show a clip of him from a panel from the first season of The Agenda where he was asked to assess the Canadian media's coverage of big criminal trials. Sheldon, please roll.
The typical coverage is not of important trials where issues are decided that matter to a democracy, but it's sex cases and some kind of little scandal. And to get somebody to actually sit there day after day on a big trial, as Mr. Waldy's doing in Chicago, costs a fortune, and almost no editors are willing to pay that money. So that's anomalous coverage. The choice and the way in which the media covers it is bad, and the tools with which they do it are antiquated and inadequate. So as a scorecard, this is not good.
Leah, who was Clayton Ruby?
He was an eminent criminal lawyer, and he was a father and a longtime loving partner to Harriet Sachs, a judge who's also a friend of mine. And he was just a wonderful, warm, incredibly generous and loving man to many, many people. He also changed. His accomplishments are kind of self-evident, but he won the Order of Canada. He defended Henry Morgentaler. He defended, he was involved in the landmark case that allowed gays into the military. I could go on and on. He had a profound effect on the legal fabric of Canada, and he was a champion of underdogs. But he was also just a really kind and loving man to so many people.
Well, you wrote this beautiful essay about him and his legacy. Who was he to you?
For me, he was the kind of, he used to say, your family. I am just a few years older than his daughters. And so I really became close with Clay and Harriet after his daughters kind of left the nest and flew off to have their lovely lives. And I would go home and I would go back, not home, but I would go and stay with them. And they have this big house. And I think I sort of occupied an in-between period when they would have kept their daughters at home with them forever. They're those kind of parents. And so I was younger, but so I wouldn't say he was a father figure at all. I have a wonderful father, but he really was he was very mentoring. He gave me a lot of advice. I could call him about he was just as interested in, should you break up with this guy, as he was in, career moves. He was one of my first readers, as is his wife. I often, in my journalism career, have dealt with, written about landmark cases and legal issues, and he was always, always one of my first readers. And I would often ask him, should I sue this person? And he was like, no, absolutely not. Don't go to court. That was always his advice. So,
how do you think he will be remembered?
Clayton, toward the end, I think it wasn't about him, even though he was very articulate. He loved the spotlight. He was a litigator, but really for him, it's about actually the changes that he effected, which are pretty heroic and unsung. Mm-hmm. But personally, so many people have come up to me, and since I wrote that piece and said, I had a criminal record and I went through law school, and he helped me actually be able to be called to the bar, or he helped me to leave my abusive husband, or all of these stories that nobody knew about him. He never would have, he and his wife Harriet, I didn't even know this at the funeral. One of the speeches revealed that they helped smuggle Salman Rushdie into Canada. And I knew them for over 20 years, but they wouldn't talk about that.
Well, maybe this is your next project, maybe a book?
Yeah,
I mean,
Clayton, no, I tried, and Harriet, his wife, tried. He said, that part of my life is over. He was very clear about that. And that's the thing, he was such a brilliant man, but when he used to say, when he was retiring, because he's one of those people, his work was so much a part of him, and he used to say, I can do two things at one time, as long as one of them is watching TV. He used to write all of his arguments in front of the Gilmore Girls, literally. And then I remember saying to him, so Clay, what are you gonna do when you retire? Are you gonna write a book? And he said, no, I think I'm just going to watch TV.
Well, we'll
And
do,
that's pretty much what he did.
well, we're going to do two things now. It really just goes to show the power of one. Let's have him have the last word of this. Thank you
Yes,
so
I
much
would
for
love
sharing
that.
your memories of him.
Thank you.
Sheldon, please roll.
We do need to ask the question and have it answered. Which system is fair? We see the strengths and weaknesses of each. Which is fair, Clayton Ruby?
Oh, God, I've got to give the answer. If you had to go guess, it's our system by far.
Fair to whom?
Fairer to the accused, fairer to the prosecution, fairer to everybody, I think. It's partly, let's admit this, it's cultural. Canada is a place where we have a different set of values. We don't get caught up, and haven't since the French-English fight, in these crusades for one thing or another. We're more laid back, and that can be a critical weakness in some kinds of prosecution, as Paul points out. But on the other hand, the absence of animus, of campaign, of a war on crime. I mean, the words don't mean anything in Canada. You look at it, you say, well, not here. But those values, the tolerance we have, the care we take over the administration of justice, and the pride we take in letting it proceed at its own pace, unimpinged upon by other political forces, that makes for a better system.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.